After she had me kicked out at 18 for being a bad role model, my stepmother thought the house was hers. When she applied for financing, the truth hit her like a brick. I was 18 the day I left my childhood home with a backpack, a guitar, and a rolled-up birth certificate in a plastic sleeve. No suitcase. No goodbye. No father at the door. Only her, my stepmother, standing at the top of the stairs like a queen watching the help leave her palace. "You brought this on yourself," she said. "I only asked for structure." Structure. That was her word for domination. She came into our lives like a heat wave, sudden, intense, and impossible to ignore. My dad met her a year after my mom passed. He was lonely, vulnerable, too eager to feel normal again. She had 2 kids, perfectly behaved in public and eerily quiet at home. Her smile never reached her eyes, and she called me your son when talking to my dad, never by my name. At first, I tried. I really did. I offered to help with the groceries, the dishes, driving the kids to school. She waved me off, tight-lipped. Said I didn't do it right, that I was too casual. She didn't like how I dressed. Said hoodies were low effort. Didn't like how I spoke. Said sarcasm was disrespectful. Didn't like my music. Said it was dark. Didn't like me. The turning point came one evening during dinner. Her son spilled juice on the table. I chuckled, not to mock, just a reflex. She looked up, eyes sharp. "What's funny?" "Nothing," I said. "Just reminded me of me at that age." "Exactly the problem," she said. "You're not an example. You're a mirror." I froze. My dad didn't say a word. After that, things got quiet but tense. Like a wire pulled too tight. She started collecting incidents like they were ammunition. "I came home 5 minutes after curfew. He's unstable." I didn't answer one of her texts. "He's secretive." Her daughter cried during a movie we watched together. He exposed them to violence. Everything became a case file. I wasn't a son anymore. I was a problem to be solved. Then one night, I came home from my shift at the bookstore and found my room half empty. Drawers open. Clothes folded on the bed. Guitar in its case by the door. My dad stood in the hallway, not looking me in the eye. "She thinks it's best," he said. She's worried about her kids." I looked past him. She stood in the living room, arms crossed, like a prosecutor delivering the verdict. "I'm not doing anything wrong," I said. "It's not about wrong," she replied. "It's about influence." I turned to my father. "Are you seriously kicking me out?" "Out of my own home." His silence was louder than anything he could have said. I didn't scream. Didn't beg. Didn't even cry. I went into my room, packed what I could carry, and left. No one followed. That night, I slept in my friend Mateo's garage. No heat. No blanket. Just the buzzing sound of a broken fridge and the weight of a life I was no longer part of. I stared at the ceiling for hours, trying to replay the scene in my head. Maybe I said something wrong. Maybe I'd been too cold, too distant, too me. But deep down I knew. She wanted me gone from the start. Over the next few weeks, I couch hopped. Mateo's couch. Cassie's basement. A couple nights in my car when I didn't want to be a burden. Nobody from home reached out. No texts. No, "Are you okay?" Not even a passive-aggressive emoji from Dad. They just erased me. And the worst part? I started to wonder if they were right. It messes with you, being cast out of the place that's supposed to love you unconditionally. You start to think every room is temporary. That nothing you touch is really yours. That at any moment, someone will say you've stayed long enough. I got a job at a coffee shop, then another at a small print shop across town. Enrolled in community college, one class at a time. Saved every cent like it was a vote for freedom. I didn't talk about home. Didn't say stepmom or dad. Just where I used to live. The only thing I kept from the house was a photo, me and my real mom, on the porch, popsicles melting down our hands. Her handwriting on the back, "You're my home no matter where we are." That stayed in my wallet. Still does. To be continued. 3 years. That's how long I stayed gone. 3 years of no birthday texts. No calls. Not even a forwarded email from my dad. It wasn't silence. It was erasure. And maybe that should have broken me. But it didn't. Because during those years, the years where I slept on couches and picked up back-to-back shifts, I rebuilt myself in secret. My life became small but structured. I worked at a print shop during the day and closed at a coffee place at night. I learned how to manage inventory, how to rewire a power strip, how to fix a jammed espresso machine. Every dollar that didn't go to rent or gas went into savings. I opened a Roth IRA before I could afford real groceries. Ate oatmeal and eggs for months. Bought nothing new unless something broke. I tracked every cent like it was a heartbeat. Because I wasn't just trying to survive. I was preparing. I didn't talk about home, not to coworkers, not to friends. If someone asked about my parents, I'd shrug and say, it's complicated. And they usually got the message. What I never told them was that I still had a key. One of the old copies my mom had made before she passed. I kept it in a small box with a few loose photos and a broken watch that used to be my dad's. I never used it. Never even tried. But I couldn't throw it away. Not yet. It was 2 years in when I heard my dad had died. No one called me directly. I found out through a Facebook post from one of his old high school buddies, some blurry photo of him fishing with a caption like, RIP to a real one. I stared at the screen for a long time. There was no anger. No grief. Just an odd sense of confirmation. He's really gone. I went to the funeral. Sat in the back. Didn't talk to anyone. My stepmother gave a eulogy that sounded like it had been written by ChatGPT. Polished, emotionless, focused on legacy and sacrifice. Not a single mention of me. Not one. Her kids sat in the front row dressed too formally for their age, staring blankly at their shoes. I didn't cry. Not because I wasn't sad, but because my grief came with conditions. I mourned the version of my father who existed before her. The one who taught me to tie a fishing knot. The one who sat with me after my first failed math test and said, "You're not your grades. You're your grit." The man who stood silently while I was exiled? He died a long time before the casket was lowered. After the service, I left quickly. Didn't speak to her. Didn't make eye contact. But as I walked to my car, I noticed something strange. She looked nervous. Not sad. Not broken. Worried. I filed that away. A month later, I got a letter in the mail from a law office. Thin envelope. Crisp paper. It read like this. Per the instructions of your late father, we are informing you that you remain the legal sole owner of the property located at address. I reread it 3 times. It felt fake. Like a test. Like someone was going to show up and say, just kidding. You're still the outsider. But it was real. He had never transferred the deed. Not after the wedding. Not after I was kicked out. It had stayed in my name. I stared at that letter for a long time. And I felt 2 things. 1, a flicker of something like justice. 2, a flood of restraint. Because I could have stormed the house that day. Could have knocked on the door, key in hand, and watched her face fall apart. But I didn't. Because I remembered what my real dad, the one before all this, used to say. You don't pull the pin on a grenade until you know exactly where you're throwing it. So I waited. Over the next few weeks, I started learning everything I could about property law, title transfers, inheritance clauses, tenant rights. I found out that my father had added a stipulation in the ownership file: the house was mine and mine alone unless I died or voluntarily signed it over. There was no co-signature. No trust. No loophole. She had been living in a house she thought she controlled while I held the deed the whole time. I didn't reach out. Didn't gloat. Didn't even change the locks. Instead, I let her believe what she needed to. Because I knew something she didn't. People like her always want more. And when she tried to take it, that's when I'd move. One afternoon, I got a call from a number I didn't recognize. I ignored it. They called again. Then left a voicemail. It was from a loan officer. Apparently, Mrs. ____ had listed the house as collateral for a line of credit. They were calling me because the application had hit a snag. Something about ownership records not matching. I almost laughed. I called the bank myself. Confirmed that I was, indeed, the sole title holder. Confirmed that no one else, including the woman currently living there, had any legal authority to use the house for anything. The bank rep apologized profusely. Said it must have been a mistake. I said it's not a mistake. She just never bothered to ask whose name was on the door. I knew what was coming next. The call. The panic. The desperation disguised as outrage. I didn't have to wait long. 3 hours later, she called. I let it ring 4 times before I picked up. Why is your name on the deed? No hello. No introduction. Just that. Flat. Cold. Furious. I paused. Then said, because it's my house. You think this is funny? She snapped. You're playing games with something that doesn't belong to you. Actually, I said, I think you're the one who's been playing house. Silence. Then, he promised me security. This was supposed to be mine. He promised a lot of things, I replied. But legally, he never changed the title. I have the paperwork. You've been sitting on this? Yep. You planned this. No, I said. You did. The second you tried to use what didn't belong to you. Another pause. Then, quieter. What are you going to do? I didn't answer right away, because I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing. I wasn't going to let her stay there on my silence anymore. To be continued. She asked, "What are you going to do?" I didn't answer, because that moment wasn't about giving her clarity. It was about giving myself control, something I hadn't had in years. I let the silence stretch just long enough for her to feel it. Then I said, "We'll talk soon," and hung up. Over the next few days she called 5 times. Left 2 voicemails. None of them angry, just that tightly wound, polite panic people use when they realize they've stepped off a ledge and hope someone else will throw them a rope. On the 6th call I picked up. "Hello?" she said, voice sweet but thin. "Thank you for answering. I just think there's been a lot of confusion." "Is that what you're calling it now?" "I didn't know about the deed. I truly didn't." "That's not my problem." She paused. "Look, I've been living here for years. This is my home. The kids' home. They're not kids anymore. You want to kick me out?" I could feel the frustration curling underneath her tone. The mask slipping. "You didn't hesitate to kick me out at 18, I said. "Less than a year after my mother died. Do you remember what you said?" She didn't answer. "You said I was a bad role model. You said I didn't belong in that house." Still no response. "So no," I said. "I'm not kicking you out. I'm just finally acknowledging that it was never yours." I gave her 30 days. Not out of kindness. Out of legality. I drafted the letter myself, had it notarized, and mailed it to the house. Certified signature required. She signed for it. I still have the receipt. 10 days later I got a text. "You're doing this to punish me. You're bitter. Let it go." I didn't reply, because it wasn't about punishment. It was about boundaries. She tried one more time in person. Showed up at the print shop where I still worked a few weekends a month. I was at the counter, scanning a client order when I saw her walk in, heels clicking too loud for the room. I didn't say a word. She waited until the customer left, then stepped forward like she was auditioning for forgiveness. "Can we talk?" "We're talking. Privately." I looked around. "This is as private as it gets." She blinked. No makeup. Tired face. Same rigid posture. "I'm asking you to reconsider," she said. "I don't have another place lined up. You've had 3 weeks. I didn't think you'd actually go through with it." "That's your problem," I said. "You think people like me don't follow through." She looked at me then, really looked. "I didn't mean to ruin things," she said, quietly. "You didn't ruin anything," I said. "You just gave me a reason to stop hoping it would get better." She left without another word. Didn't slam the door. Didn't scream. Just walked out like someone who'd finally realized the game was over. On day 30, the house was empty. No truck. No movers. Just gone. I drove over early in the morning, key still cold in my hand, and stood on the porch I hadn't touched in 3 years. It smelled like fresh paint and dust. I walked through slowly. The furniture was gone. Walls bare. Floors cleaned, but not well. There was a small envelope on the kitchen counter. My name, handwritten in stiff cursive. Inside, a check, a few $1,000s, and a note that said, "For any damages." I'm sorry. I didn't cash it. Didn't throw it away either. I just filed it in the same folder where I kept the deed, the eviction letter, and a single photo of my mom. I stood in my old room for a while. The sunlight hit the wall in the same spot as before. There were faint marks where posters used to hang. The closet still had that one creaky hinge. Everything was smaller than I remembered. But for the first time, it didn't make me feel small. I wasn't the lost teenager begging to stay. I was the man with the keys. That night I slept there. No furniture. Just a sleeping bag on the floor, a bottle of water, and a house that no longer held ghosts, just walls and choices. It was the best sleep I'd had in years. The next morning, I stood on the front steps and drank coffee from a thermos, watching the street wake up. Neighbors passed by, a few giving me curious looks. I nodded, said hello. No one knew me anymore, and that was fine, because I didn't come back for recognition. I came back for closure. I didn't tell anyone at work. Didn't post online. Didn't call anyone from the past. This wasn't revenge. It was restoration. It was a broken picture finally fitting back into its frame. Not because someone forced it, but because someone had the patience to wait and return on their own terms. And I finally had. I didn't move in right away. It would have felt too symbolic. Like I was trying to prove something. Instead, I kept showing up on Sundays. Fixing things. Cleaning. Replacing light bulbs, unjamming doors, recaulking windows that hadn't closed right since I was 13. Each week, the house felt a little less like a battlefield and a little more like a place with breath in its lungs again. No tension in the corners. No silence waiting to strike. Just quiet. But this time I chose it. Eventually, I brought in a mattress. Then a coffee table I found at a thrift store. A used armchair with one sun-faded arm that I still sit in now writing this. I didn't try to recreate the past. I didn't put the old photos back on the walls or dig out trophies I hadn't earned for anyone but myself. I wasn't rebuilding what I lost. I was making something new in a place that used to belong to someone else. And now? It belonged to me. I got a letter from her 2 weeks later. No return address. Just a plain white envelope, the handwriting stiff and familiar. Walter, I hope you're taking care of the place. I know it was never really mine, and I understand now how much pain I caused you. I was angry. Protective. Scared. Doesn't excuse anything. Just wanted to say. I see it differently now. You were never dangerous. Just different. And I didn't know how to handle that. I read it twice. Didn't cry. Didn't burn it. Just folded it and slid it into the back of the same folder that held the deed and my dad's death certificate. Some things you don't need closure for. You just need to stop opening the wound. That spring I planted something. 2 trees. One on each side of the front yard. I don't know much about gardening. I had to look up which roots wouldn't mess with the foundation. But I wanted something that would stay. Grow. Be mine. The neighbors asked about them a few times. I just said, filling the space. One afternoon, while I was trimming back branches, a little girl from next door wandered over and asked if I lived there. I nodded. Is it your house? I looked at her. It is now. I don't tell many people the full story. If someone asks how I ended up here, I usually say something vague like, family left it to me. That's technically true. They left. And I kept what mattered. My dad's memory still lingers in the walls. Not his voice, not his presence, just the imprint of who he was before he got quiet. Before he let someone else decide what his son was worth. Sometimes I sit at his old desk. The one he used to do taxes on. The one I once spilled juice across during a meltdown over algebra. I keep it simple now. A lamp. A notebook. A photo of my mom. She's smiling in it. That natural, no-makeup smile she used to give me when I surprised her by putting my dishes away without being asked. She would have liked this version of me. There are still moments, flashes, where the old pain flares up. Like when I walk past the room that used to be mine and remember how it looked the night I left. Or when I find a photo of me and my dad fishing and wonder if he ever really forgave himself for choosing comfort over courage. But those moments are softer now. Not knives. Just memories with worn-down edges. A friend came to visit last month. She looked around the place and said it feels safe. I nodded. It is. And it is. Not just because the locks work and the floors are level and the roof doesn't leak. But because I don't flinch when I close the door behind me. I don't brace for correction. I don't lower my voice to take up less space. This house doesn't shrink me. And that's worth more than square footage ever could be. I don't know where she lives now. Don't need to. I assume she landed on her feet. She always does. But the difference now is that's no longer my responsibility. Her comfort isn't my cross to carry. Her opinion isn't my truth to refute. She can think whatever she wants about who I am and what I became. But if she drives past this house now, my house, she'll see the porch light on. The windows clear. The trees blooming on both sides of the lawn. And maybe, just maybe, she'll remember what she once tried to erase. That some people don't disappear. Some people just wait. Until the silence is over. Until the deed is in their name. Until they're ready to stop surviving and start owning. I still keep the original key in that little box. Alongside the photo, the folded apology, the eviction notice. Not because I need them anymore. But because they remind me of what it took to get here. What it cost to come home. And how powerful it is when you stop asking to stay and start deciding who gets to stay with you.